Good morning to this S&D press conference for this session, and it's my pleasure to hand over to our Group President, Iratxe García Perez.
Good morning, and thank you for to be here. Buenos días y
Good morning. Thank you for coming to this press conference this morning. We're going to have a look at the week ahead. We have many important issues on the agenda for this week, issues which will be important and will be on our agenda for the next 5 years, especially in relation to the conclusions of the Council, as I mentioned at plenary just now. So what we say about the items on this week's agenda will determine how we view and how we approach these very important issues in the next 5 years. So the week ahead is very important. We're going to tackle issues then to be dealt with this week and again in the future. And I am available should you have any questions. As regards Brexit, first of all, we are paying close attention to what is happening in London. As you know, our political family has always wanted the United Kingdom to remain in the European Union. We were never happy with the results of the referendum in 2016, but of course we have to accept it. Our priority has been given to avoid a no-deal Brexit, and the amendment adopted on Saturday in the House of Commons is a safeguard, a buffer, which avoids us having a no-deal Brexit on the 31st of October if the legislative process in the UK has not come to an end. So now we're waiting to see if the UK Parliament will accept the negotiated agreement. If so, the European Parliament will do what is necessary in order to shoulder our responsibilities in this regard. But we will only do so once the UK Parliament has ratified the agreement. And, of course, if in the meantime no substantive amendments have been made to the agreement that is currently on the table. And only then will this Parliament get to work and shoulder our responsibilities in this regard. As regards the Council conclusions, Council session held last week, as regards military intervention on the part of Turkey in Syria, I'm glad there was a unanimous decision on the part of the Council to condemn the Turkish military interference in Syria. This infringes international law and increases instability in the region. We're going to have a debate on this tomorrow, and on Thursday we're going to vote on the resolution. And the embargo on arms sales from member states, we approve that, and the possibility of imposing economic sanctions. That has been our standpoint in our group to date. And so at the debate in plenary, we will defend that standpoint. As regards North Macedonia and Albania, it's time to open up accession negotiations. We want this process to be unblocked at Council level as soon as possible. The European Commission has recognized that both countries have carried out the necessary reforms, and we think that the Albanese and the people of North Macedonia deserve a gesture of hope on our part. We know that to kick off negotiations doesn't mean that we establish a date when they will exceed, but it shows that they are important to us and that we want them to occupy their proper position in the European Union. As regards climate and the budgetary framework, the Council has not given us the impulse that we needed to start on this. We have very ambitious objections as regards the new Green Deal in particular, but this must be accompanied by the necessary budgetary means. For our political group, environmental change must be a key access for this mandate and this legislature, and we need to incorporate the social justice aspect. As I mentioned at plenary, we cannot allow the working class and small and medium-sized enterprises that carry the burden of this very necessary transition. We need transitional funds to be made available for this. We also need to negotiate the new MFF, and we have seen that the Council has not adopted a firm position on this. So we, as Parliament, continue to abide by our standpoint. No budget below 1.3% will help us face up to the challenges that we must face up to now and in the future. We need to support and to fund fisheries policy, agricultural policies, and we need to fund new policies in the European Union too. For instance, everything related to the new Green Deal, to this fair transition, social asylum policy, unemployment benefit, and child guarantees, etc. They need resourcing and funding. So we will continue to abide by our standpoint here, and the Council cannot deny the very important role that the Parliament plays. We are co-legislators here, and we need to set out very clearly our priorities in these areas.
Sorry for the translation. Y con respecto a...
To conclude, as regards the resolution on search and rescue operations in the Mediterranean, could I point out that for us, this is a priority. And we have pushed this resolution forward. We need a very urgent response on the basis of solidarity to what is happening at the moment in the Mediterranean. According to the resolution, we seek global solutions to this problem. We need technical and financial support to member states. They must comply with international obligation, the international obligation to save the lives of those that are in peril. For us, it is very worrying, and we cannot understand why the EPP and others are against a text, the goal of which is to put an end to the loss of life in the Mediterranean. These are the issues that I wanted to highlight today as regards the week ahead at plenary this week, and I am at your disposal should you have any questions, of course.
Thanks a lot, Iratxe. And Guido, if you could check maybe for the translation or the noise, that would be great. Thank you. Merci. Griselda, first question. Merci.
Merci, Griselda Pastor de la Radio Española.
Griselda Pastor from Spanish Radio. I'd like to know what your timetable is as regards the vote on the von der Leyen Commission, and you have any direct information on that breakfast that carried out between herself and some heads of government at the summit as regards the rejection of some commissioners designate. Was it correct to have this discussion with heads of government instead of heads of group? Response. As regards the timetable, so as regards Mrs. von der Leyen, President-elect of Commission, our group has asked her to speed up this process of naming 3 new candidates. There are 3 member states that have to table new candidates. This has not happened to date. The European Parliament can begin the process once we have these names of new candidates. So it's not in our hands to determine the timetable for approving the new European Commission. But it is, of course, important to us that the process speed up. We need to push this forward, and we need a new European Commission as soon as possible so that it can get to work. So we have made this request to the President-elect that these new candidates be put forward as soon as possible. As regards that meeting, that breakfast meeting held last week during the Council summit, the meeting between Mrs. von der Leyen and representative of political parties and families. First of all, let me say that I think that this might have been a positive meeting and a positive thing to do, because it means that Europe is adopting a European standpoint as far as its political groupings go, because the Council represents national interests, national positions, the position of national governments. So when the initiative is taken to meet as political groups, that is an important aspect for us, and it makes it clear that Europe is based on a European point of view too, on a European position and standpoint. That's why I think it's important to get that message across in meetings of this nature. The European Parliament has to discuss issues with the heads of parliamentary groups, and Mrs. von der Leyen yesterday therefore held a meeting with us, heads of political groups, so that we can discuss the Council conclusions and take stock of the Council conclusions. And we made clear our position to Mrs. von der Leyen, too. I think that during this process it has become clear that the role of the European Parliament is very important indeed, that we carry out our duties in a very responsible fashion, and we shoulder our responsibilities. The Council is aware of the fact that decisions taken at the European Parliament must be complied with and accepted by other bodies, and that must always be borne in mind, the very important role that the European Parliament can and does play, and political groups therein too.
Towards David, and then we go to the back.
Yes, hi, Nikolai Nielsen, EU Observer. I had a question on the resolution on search and rescue. You had mentioned that there was some disagreement with the EPP. Could you go into a little bit more detail and the dividing lines between your group and the others, the EPP, when it comes to that resolution? What were the obstacles in that? Thank you.
En estos momentos.
At the moment, there is no agreement. I cannot go into detail because there are negotiations underway still between the different groups. But the EPP does not support the resolution that we tabled. Let's see what happens during the course of the week when we negotiate all this. And we can give you more concrete details after we've had the debate, and we can give you more information after the vote.
David Carretta, Radio Radicale. Again, on your meeting yesterday with Ursula von der Leyen and the leader of the two other majority political group, or the political group of the would-be majority in this parliament. What was the result? I mean, what you said that you discussed the European Council conclusion, but did you discuss the issue of the next commission, the next commissioners, if you have a majority to support this von der Leyen commission or not? Because for the moment there is no majority supporting her. Everybody is saying, oh, well, we are waiting for somebody else, France, Hungary, Romania, and so on, or the parliament, but nobody is taking responsibility of the majority that should support the next commission. And the second question on Catalonia, if I may. Today, Kathleen Van Brent, which is a colleague of you in the Socialist Party, tweeted that Spain is a constitutional state, but that does not mean that there can be no problem with the legal system. And we must also have the courage to talk about it at European level. What's your comment? Do you accept that we should talk about legal system in national member states, or Spain is an exception on that? Thank you.
Con respecto a la...
As regards your first question, of course, no group, or at least my group, my political group, cannot yet say that we are prepared to approve the European Commission, because we have not finalized the European Commission yet. We need 3 new names, 3 new candidates, so it would be irresponsible of us to give our view on whether we can confirm the current composition of the European Commission or not. We need 3 more candidates. We are pressing for these names to be tabled as soon as possible, that these 3 new candidates comply with the necessary requirements, personal integrity, etc., which are fundamental to us here in the European Parliament. So until we have these three new candidates on the table, it's very difficult for us to give our view on the new Commission. We, our group, would like that the new Commission get to work as soon as possible, of course, but the ball is in the court of the three governments, the three member states that need to give us three new candidates. As regards Catalonia, of course, I've got to respect the personal viewpoint of colleagues in my political group and that of those in other political groups. We are a democracy, and that is a key point in any democracy. However, the almost unanimous view of our political group is the one that we made clear yesterday when one wanted to include in this week's agenda a debate on the situation in Catalonia. For us, the rule of law is fundamental in the European Union, and we therefore think it's very important to respect any legal decisions taken in any one country. The separation of powers is something which is fundamental and is key. We don't find it opportune at the moment to have a political debate on a legal sentence, which I repeat needs to be respected. Spain has a very strong democracy in force, which provides all necessary guarantees that the legal system will prevail and will be respected. That's a unanimous position of our political group. I am sure that we will be able to hold any necessary debates on this in our group in due course. I understand that one is concerned about the current situation in Spain as regards the conflict in Catalonia. I am sure, however, that the Spanish government will be able to manage, as it has done to date, manage the situation correctly. In other words, they will respect the ruling, the legal ruling that was handed down and the sentence that was imposed. A decision has to be taken on the situation in Catalonia. We need this. It is indispensable to ensure that one can live in harmony in Catalonia. We cannot allow there being a government in Catalonia that governs only for those that feel one way. Governments have to govern all citizens, irrespective of how they feel and their views. Thank you.
Another question in the back, please. Yes.
Oui, bonjour, Virginie Malang.
Virginie Malang from Le Monde. I'd like to come back to the question that David asked you a couple of minutes ago about your meeting yesterday with Ms. von der Leyen. I understood what you said, but there was no strong majority for Ms. von der Leyen in July. And so we were wondering what that would mean for the legislature in Parliament. Could you perhaps tell me a little bit more of what was said with Ms. von der Leyen yesterday? How do you see things moving forward with the parliamentary majority? And I'm not talking about the vote in the college necessarily, but we didn't really get very much from your response on that, please.
Thank you. Could I stress the fact that we discussed the Council conclusions, we discussed the MFF, the financial framework, something which is very important to us and which will govern the discussions and the work of the European Commission in the future. I also, at that meeting, transmitted the same message I have been tabling for the past few months. We want a European Commission that can transform the European project. Names are important. We need the names of these three new candidates. Here at the European Parliament, we've already given a green light to the majority of commissioners designate, except for three. The others have gone through the hearings and they have been approved. They have gone through the hearings in a positive fashion, so that has to be borne in mind. So we have supported the majority of commissioners designate, but we are still awaiting the names of three new candidates for the three that were rejected. we also need the CVs of these 3 new candidates. We need to look at those, and we have to see about their portfolios too, because our group is not totally in agreement with all portfolios. The protection of the European way of life, for instance. We think that the president-elect should change that portfolio, that inclusion of the social dimension in our Luxembourg commissioner-designate portfolio, Nicola Schmitz, on jobs, the inclusion of social protection, perhaps. So the titles of the different portfolios should perhaps be amended somewhat, and then the financial capacity and resources available for different policies. These are some of the issues that we have tabled, and some of our conditions before this political group can vote in favor of the new Commission. We will continue to act in a responsible fashion because we hope that the future European Commission can take charge when it comes to changing issues in Europe as regards climate change, equality. We need an economic policy that can redistribute wealth, all these different issues, of course, that you're all familiar with.
We can't take the question here. We can do it outside because we have to hand over to the next political group now. Thanks a lot for coming. Thanks a lot, Iratxe, García. Have a good week.